Hi, I'm SomeColorMage, and we're running in hot because we're recording this at the very last second and Blue isn't available. Joining me today is...
This is Technobliterator, and Aston Villa are fifth in the league now. Just wanted to give you that very important update.
Oh, good for them. And
Very good for them.
this is the Final Fantasy Wiki Podcast, the only podcast of FinalFantasy.fandom.com. And because we are winging this, we pretty much just have the news to cover and maybe some small wiki updates. Okay,
some very big wiki updates, we should say. Very, very important and going to be very impactful in the future. But yes, it is mostly just news and that.
They are certainly at this point big as in large and immense, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. I've got a list of stuff that happened this month. First on the list, Pixel remasters on the Switch and PS4. Finally happened. Came out on the 19th. They've got a couple more changes. They have a new font, which, as I discovered after downloading, is actually optional. They start up for the first time with the terrible font, and you got to go into the settings and turn the new font on.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's funny.
Yeah, and they've also added, like the standard cheat grind stuff that a lot of the Final Fantasy remakes do, where you can turn off the encounter rate and boost experience and guild drops.
Yeah. It's basically, they don't want to rebalance the whole game by making an easy mode, so they just put in the cheat options instead. For those who do not care one bit about the gameplay, they only care about the story.
Well, part of that is that they already got burned by this, because when they were starting putting them out, they had actually increased the experience rates, which kind of bit them, because Final Fantasy IV, you actually started leveling too fast, and it was just made most of the game a joke. I think they undid that.
That makes sense for 4, but Final Fantasy VI, my favorite one, that game is a joke as it is. Gameplay wise, that game is so easy. I cannot imagine them possibly making it easier. But if for some reason that very easy game is still not easy enough for you, you can now use the cheat options to make it even more of a joke.
Well, they are easy games. None of these are particularly hard. It's Final Fantasy. Like the hardest Final Fantasy has ever been in the main series, barring optional content, is 13, and that's still not very hard. But there is still a curve to it, and if you disrupt that curve, it just becomes less interesting.
That's what I mean. Like Final Fantasy V, if you don't understand the mechanics of it that well, that game can be extremely difficult. But as soon as you understand it, then it's the easiest thing in the world to ever play. So I think I personally would say, if you're considering playing Final Fantasy V and using the cheats, I would highly recommend against that, because 90% of the fun with that game is the mechanics. Like, the story is, it's better than I remembered it when I went and replayed it for the Pixel remaster, but it's still not, that's not why people are playing that game. That story has no character development, it has no character arcs, the lore is more interesting than I remembered, but it's still not that interesting. You're only playing that game because the job system is addictive as fuck. That is the reason you are playing that game.
Yeah, I definitely don't think you need to experience grind in 5. I haven't checked that game. If it has an option to increase ABP gain, I might actually recommend going with that, because some of the ABP requirements are a bit over the top.
Oh yeah, especially Red Mage.
Yeah, especially Red Mage.
requirements for red mage are so stupid, and it's for an ability that's good, but not like nearly as good as it's advertised.
Yeah, dual cast, is excellent and can be used to break some things, but A, it is not the most broken thing ever. There are plenty of jobs that break the game just by existing, and B, it's not worth 1,000 ABP on top of everything else in the class.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. But it is still pretty sweet to pair dual cast with summon and summon twice and basically kill anything. That is pretty freaking sweet.
Yeah, so anyway, there's not really much extra to talk about with these, and they're the Pixel remasters on console. They appear to run pretty much the same. It's just these couple extra features.
Yeah, but with the font now fixed, there's basically like, aside from minor nitpicks, there's no reason to like not get this. As if you've never played these before, you've never played these games before, this is your way to go. This is how you go back and play them. So, you're a new fan after picking up 16 or 7 Remake, go play these versions. There's no reason not to.
Yeah. Okay, so next we have on the list is so Final Fantasy 11. I forget if we covered this last month, but there's been a change in producer. Like when did this actually happen?
This happened on the 5th of April, or April 5th.
Okay, so we didn't cover it yet then.
So presumably we didn't cover it unless we were seeing into the future somehow, which I don't think any of us can do.
Well, like, that's when like this interview we're looking at is dated, and just trying to figure out if if we actually need to like cover the base of what happened, because it's just a small extra thing on top of that.
So the new producer was saying how he wants the MMORPG to eventually be its own standalone game, which means you'd be able to play Final Fantasy XI without having to play an MMORPG. Which, okay, I mean, makes sense, I guess. If it's a numbered game, they don't want it to be like, oh, a numbered Final Fantasy that you cannot play.
Well, that is what they are doing with 14 at the moment. They're trying to make it so that you can get through the entire main story except for the big boss fights solo. And even then, like a few of the big ones, like all of the four-man trials that were in A Realm Reborn, and also one of the trials near the end of Endwalker, are also capable of being played solo with the AI companions. And like, yeah, that does work fine. It slows those dungeons down a bit, but at the same time, they're dungeons. They're kind of brain dead, and everything aside from like the dungeons and trials in the main story have always been solo. So, but yeah, 11 on the other hand is a game that was much more party oriented, and that is something that they have been working on for a while. Really, like, I don't I am not a big historian of 11, so like I can't tell you when they introduced the trust system, which was like you being able to summon NPCs as party members, and also like.
All I know about Final Fantasy 11 is you can level down in that game. That game can take away a level from you if you die.
I believe they removed that. Like,
okay, well there was one point.
You can still lose experience, but can't fall below the threshold for a level.
Yeah, that's right. There was one point in the game that you could actually be leveled down if you sucked at it too much. Yeah. It's a brutal ass game.
Yeah, it's just that, because this was made in the EverQuest era of MMOs. If you died, you lost experience, and if you fell below the maximum experience for a level, well, you're no longer at that level. Um,
Yeah, it's very different with 14 that was made in the post World of Warcraft age
yeah,
versus Final Fantasy 11 that's an ancient MMORPG in terms of game design. That's like ancient these days.
like um, like just in the genre convention, it's ancient in general. Like, oh god, when was EverQuest?
Well, it must have been like the 90s or something stupid like that.
Ever. Uh, EverQuest was 1999, and
Oh, so it was still, so they were still using dial-up internet to connect to that.
that
That
they
must
were
have pissed
they
people
were
off.
still using dial-up in World of Warcraft.
That must have pissed people off so much. Like, hey son, I need to take a call right now. No, sorry, I've still got like 5 dungeons I want to play. That must
Like
have pissed people off.
have you ever seen how slow pre-World of Warcraft MMOs were? And World of Warcraft was among these at start because it was also designed for dial-up. But like these were, and Final Fantasy 11 still is, a heavily menu-driven game because
Oh man, I can't imagine it these days, man.
yeah, because like yeah, because like hell, 14, the original version of 14 was still kind of heavily menu-driven because like I I mean you've played modern 14 at some point, so you
Yeah,
know roughly how it works. Yeah, in 14's 1.0 version, you had if you had to like hit left and right on the hotbar to select something
jeez.
because 14 1.0 was still fairly slow. Um,
Yeah,
but
I can't imagine that, man.
yeah, a lot of World of Warcraft's uh, old jankiness, which to their credit they have pretty much gotten rid of all of it, was due to the fact that because it was designed for dial-up, you had to give several seconds to make sure everything was running correctly, and and yeah, because 11 is ancient, very ancient, still developed on PlayStation 2 dev kits, ancient. um,
Yeah,
yeah, there's no opportunity to get rid of that jank, and at the same time, they're also hitting the edge of what they can do with it. I know we talked about this last month, and like they basically can't add new enemies to the game anymore. It just doesn't. They just can't do it. 11 is definitely hitting the end of its life unless they completely remade it, which probably isn't happening.
yeah. I was gonna say that's a shit ton of money that I doubt they want to spend.
Yeah. I do assume that they will want to eventually convert it to offline because I mean this is one of Square's big ones, so it seems like they don't want it to completely disappear, and also like they're under Creative Business Unit 3, which seems to have this philosophy, judging by what 14's doing. And also, like, they've made an offline version of Dragon Quest X, despite the fact that that game's still going.
Oh, I didn't know about that. That's interesting.
Yeah,
So, like,
the offline version is also Japan only.
of course.
um,
So, like, so I guess the point of it is just that there's still a sector of the fan base that still wants to play this game and not have the MMO elements, but I guess it's like it must be the story's popular enough for them to want that.
there must be some appeal to it, otherwise they wouldn't have made the voracious resurgence.
Right.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I mean, I would like that to happen. I actually have like a, a copy of Final Fantasy 11 registered to my Steam account that I've never used.
I don't have like the only thing I know about 11 is when it's appeared in the Dissidia games. I know nothing else about it. I know that Shantato rhymes a lot. I couldn't tell you anything else.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, moving on. What we have next? Right, Stranger Paradise came out on Steam. I'm pretty sure
Woo!
it does run better than it used to when it was on Epic Games Store, but still, I'm pretty sure this is still such like a PlayStation 4 optimized game that you probably prefer to run it on PlayStation 4 over PlayStation 5.
So like, why was this one exclusive to Epic Games Store? Because I
I
get
don't
several
know.
in there. Okay.
Like, I
So
mean,
was it some kind of deal they did with them, or
like it must be some kind of deal, and it's not even like an Unreal Engine deal thing, because like they also did the exclusivity
right,
for Neo: The World Ends with You, which is Unity.
right? That's why it's so like weird. But either way, you can play it on Steam now.
Yeah. Um. I mean, it is still a fun game. I need to get back to going through the DLC, which is easily cheesable, but not but still kind of a lot to get through because it is a grind. like
Well, I mean,
like the
there's
DLC
a
literally
like,
starts with a grind. That's not an exaggeration. You have to start by grinding currency for the first DLC to unlock
oh
cutscenes,
geez,
more cutscenes with Bahamut before you get to the end of that and you get to fight him. And you have to complete the
oh geez.
DLCs in order. You have to beat Bahamut to unlock the Gilgamesh DLC. You have to beat Gilgamesh to unlock the Omega and Mateus DLC.
All I know is there is a way to grind in this game by casting the tornado spell and kicking Marlboros off this like ledge or something that like instant kills them and just
yeah,
spamming that over and over and over.
yeah,
And that is still my favorite fact about this game by
yeah,
far. Like that just looks like so much fun to just fuck around with them like that.
yeah.
That is still my favorite fact about this game.
Punching enemies off cliffs is fun. Yes.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. Um. Right. So next, okay, well, that's like the biggest piece of news. Let's leave it until we kind of like, taking care of all the other stuff. So move on.
Yeah, yeah.
Final Fantasy 12. Matsuno has just outright said that the whole belief that Bash was the original protagonist is false.
Yep. I mean, it makes sense, and it doesn't make sense at the same time because the main protagonist should have been Ash, since it's pretty much Ash's story. But Vaughn was always there as the audience surrogate character. That was always his point. So from that perspective, it makes sense. But I feel like they just did a horrible job integrating Vaughn into the main story.
Hmm.
I understand why this rumor existed, and it's because Vaughn feels like a last minute addition.
Right.
Like it genuinely feels like that.
Bash and Ash do feel like the central character for most of the game.
Yep.
Like it is generally speaking an ensemble minus Pinello. Uh, uh,
Oh yeah.
uh, but yeah, but also just when you think about it, the lead character being like the the peasant boy does
Mhm.
tend to fit a lot more with Matsuno's general writing. Uh, Ramza might technically be nobility, but he definitely doesn't identify with it. And like at the start of Tactics Ogre, which is about as far as I've played because I have too much shit to play. Like your characters at the start of that are just like a bunch of people at one town who are basically hiding in fear of soldiers being assholes in the region. Like it.
Final Fantasy 12 is one of my favorites in the series. I still love almost everything about it. But the story is where it clearly becomes so evident that that game had a ton of development issues. That game went through development hell. And like if you just look through like the history of it, like you can completely understand why the story just feels so disjointed. So I feel like Vaughn not feeling integrated in the story is entirely because of they just mucked around with the story and had like just there wasn't a clear direction on it, basically, right? Still a beautiful game, still one of the best they've ever made, but like the development issues are really evident with this one. Like that was the first one in the series where it really became obvious that they had like the like it became really obvious to them that whatever was going on in the studio with whether it's because of the Enix merger or not. Like I don't want to blame engines for that one because like, engines can be to blame for a bunch of stuff that happened. In this case, I don't think it was that. No, in this case it was just, they had a ton of development issues with this game, and that's why the story is a disjointed mess. Like it could have been better than it was. And it's still pretty fucking amazing.
Gotta say, one of the most impressive things that Square Enix has ever done is manage to hit an HD development bottleneck on the PlayStation 2. Speaking of other impressive things, the Square Enix have done. So have you heard of the Portopia serial murder case?
I'm afraid I have not.
So this is a game from the 80s. It's 40 years old now, and it's one of Yuji Hoри's older games. It's it's a visual novel, visual novel / adventure game, that kind of thing. Just general crime drama stuff. But the fact that it is in 1983, it did a lot of things that were incredibly groundbreaking in the Japanese scene, at least. It never got translated, and part of that is because, it's a Famicom game with a text parser. Can you imagine how hell that would be to try to bring it into English?
It's a Famicom game with a text parser.
Yeah. The Famicom.
Wow.
The Famicom was also a general computer in addition to being a NES. Like the Famicom was capable of reading discs. Like sometimes you see it's shortened to FDS, Famicom Disk System.
Oh really? Oh, yeah. I didn't hear about that.
Yeah. Yeah, like that. Like if you see some comparisons to between like Japanese and American versions of NES games, sometimes there'll be one of the big things will often be like audio and storage related changes, because the audio, first of all, the NES had a couple of input spots missing on its cartridge thing, so it couldn't use some of the sound chips that the Famicom cartridges could use. And second of all, there had to be alternate storage formats for some games because you can't save games to a disc, but you can to a cartridge. So that's where. Right. So that's why a lot of Famicom games, NES games have password systems because, well, you had to use that if you were using a disc.
Oh. Learn something new every day on this podcast.
So anyway, Square Enix. I forget when people first heard about this, but they were remaking Portopia, and this month they released it for free because they wanted to use it as a tech demo to demonstrate how improved the AI behind text parsers have worked in the past 40 years.
Oh, that's what that shit was.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
so
know
it was
some
the
some people
remake.
were just giving it strange looks because they use the term AI. If you use AI exclusively to refer to the stupid art movements and stuff, no, that's not what artificial intelligence actually is. It's just the instance of getting the computer to do something by itself. And yeah, a
Yeah,
text
it's
parser is an instance of AI because it has to interpret what you've typed in and try to map it to something it does know.
but we should
So
also we should also clarify because the term AI when it comes to game development is used to mean something a little different, which is like you talk about AI in terms of like oh the enemy AI, as in like
right,
the enemies are like programmed a certain way, as in and that's used to refer to they have quote unquote artificial intelligence in that they know oh I'm seeing Tidus on screen I'm gonna whack him like that's what that means but that's not artificial intelligence in the terms that we're talking about here like in terms of you know to use your phrase computers knowing like being able to do something on its own that's a whole other field of like machine learning
right,
of like
right,
just a bunch of things going on like around this new like groundbreaking technology which everyone's
right.
like simultaneously extremely excited about and extremely terrified of like
Right. And
and
like
there's a
at
lot of
at the
hype
same
though.
time, like yeah, enemy scripting is still a rudimentary form of AI. It is within the field. Like you wouldn't call like those chess bots not AI.
Oh yeah,
Because yeah,
yeah, cool.
yeah.
There was recently a thing where they taught a bunch of robots, like real robots, not like just computer generated. They taught a bunch of real robots how to play football. And you can see like I'm talking about real football, not American football. They taught them how to play it with an actual field, like and you just look at it and they figured out tactics on their own and they did that not they weren't programmed any of these tactics. They actually like figured it out themselves and you look at it and it looks like a bunch of little toddlers playing football like and it's like stuff like that is like incredible what AI can come up with so AI in the field of video games is no joke like they've had AI being able to play like League I think it was League of Legends where they beat all the like pro teams at it like these professionals who do nothing but play the video game their whole lives like
Mhm.
the AI was able to beat them, and they like I think it was League. I don't remember, but yeah, like that's it. Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Mhm. Yeah. So anyway, they put out this tech demo, and this is actually something I wanted to see because it's actually a field of AI that is interesting, and then it turns out it didn't actually work.
Right.
Um, yeah. So on the plus side, it appears to be a faithful remake of the game. Actually, like it's not trying to generate shit with the AI. It's just trying to use the AI to figure out what it can do within the scope of the game. Um, on the downside, uh, first of all, I'm actually looking at the Vice article that Blue had in his list of stuff to cover now.
Yeah. Same.
It mentions that a lot of people didn't like the art, which I mean, okay, I guess, but also, second of all, because the AI is entirely local, the game's huge, um, and also it seems to actually have a lot of trouble trouble actually mapping your commands to something, which, I mean, I can also kind of understand why this is the case, because again, this is a game from the early 80s. That there is not a lot it could actually do. Like, it was impressive in the amount of what it could do, but that's still not a lot. So, like, the text parser is not going to have a lot of commands which it can fully execute, right? Which means, you're not going to be able to find a lot of the right stuff. Also, it's a huge resource hog because as part of this demonstration, it also had a speech-to-text system, which
jeez.
yeah, which, I mean, that is also an impressive thing, and also it apparently uses 5 gigabytes of RAM.
So basically, this game would have been super impressive if it actually worked. But it doesn't work. Like, so in other words, like, good try, I guess, but, like, like, I can see for sure, like, the idea behind this. And I imagine, like, like, I'm of two minds about it, really, because on the one hand, like, it's showing me, like, oh, like, games like this could actually be super exciting if you could actually talk to a computer, like, legit. Like, imagine RPGs, for example, where you can actually, like, have a legit conversations with the NPCs instead of just these, like, a list of text commands you could give them. Like, that would be super interesting, right? But on the other hand, it also shows you the massive limit because, we've seen the example of it, and it's a game that is a much, much more primitive version of what I just described. And, it takes up all the resources on your computer, runs like shit, doesn't work properly. So maybe it will show you, like, that we could be there one day, or maybe that will show you that this is just, a horrible idea. Or it could be like, I guess if they were to do this, they'd have to do it in some form of cloud computing way. And then they'd have to actually figure out a business model for cloud computing.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the same... So I'm looking more at this article, and apparently it does have, like, some basic capability to go off script, but it's mostly disabled because Square Enix had problems getting it to generate replies that weren't completely sociopathic. So, standard problem for fucking chatbot AI shit.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, like, I'll be honest with AI, like, I do believe it's a super useful tool and it's super exciting, but, like, there's so much hype around this shit. Like, there's so much hype around ChatGPT. It's gonna be like self-driving cars again. When back in the 2010s, they would say, oh, we're going to have self-driving cars. We're going to have them next year. It's going to be so exciting. But also, we're going to put a bunch of truck drivers and taxi drivers all out of work, so it's scary at the same time. But we're going to have self-driving cars, and it's going to be a revolution. Next year comes. They're like, okay, we don't have self-driving cars yet, but we're going to have them next year, and then we're going to put everyone out of work, and then it's going to be really exciting and also really terrifying. Come next year, and they still don't have it, right? And it's come to a point where, like, a lot of these, self-driving car startups have either shut down or just their funding has completely dried up.
Right.
Because they said, look, it's been 10 years, right? No, this technology has not materialized to the extent you promised us it would, and no one's come up with a business model for it. So it's just gone nowhere. Like, and I imagine, like, with this ChatGPT stuff, a lot of this stuff around AI is going to go exactly the same way. They'll get really good at it up to a certain point, and then they'll hit a wall. And they'll hit the wall, and they'll think, like, oh, we'll get past it next year or next year or next year. But they're just going to be stuck. Like, I think there's just a lot of hype, and people need to be, like, very aware of the fact that there's a lot of money behind this shit, and there's a lot of marketing hype that comes with that money, and there's certain stuff you should take with a massive grain of salt.
Right, and a lot of that hype is very ephemeral. It's led by deeply weird people on social media who just want to crow about how this is going to be a revolution, blah blah blah. And the second something new comes out, they all pivot to that. Like, all these self-driving people, most of them pivoted to NFTs, which left just the people who are like, look, I will create a fake human child to prove that my Tesla will not randomly run children over. That is a thing that actually happened.
Yep.
As it turns out, Twitter was full of deeply moronic people even before the head of the morons bought it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's that's the thing. This is all coming mostly from Musk fanboys.
Yeah.
Like, they're the loudest and most annoying people.
Yeah, and also, like, NFTs crashed over the past year, partly because it was a scam, and partly because all of those hype men have moved to generative AI.
Yeah, and there's a ton of people that have this massive lawsuit against them because they marketed these NFTs that they didn't even use themselves, and they turned out to be a waste of money.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
It's a weird time in tech, man. There's a lot of hype and a lot of bullshit coming out.
Like, I am not particularly interested in generative AI because I mean, like, I would rather not. I just, you see this stuff, and most of the time there's still something that seems extremely fake about it.
Yep.
Like I know it's real, but it doesn't feel like it's a product that was thoughtfully created. It's some of that artistic merit thing, because the AI doesn't really know quite what it's actually doing, unless you train it on data sets that are frankly incredibly unethical. It tends to not create an output that is actually preferable.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a thing. Like, I'm fully admitting that I might look like a clown on this in like a year or two's time. But hear it now, quote me later, right? All this generative AI stuff when it comes to like, oh shit, we generated a video of Barack Obama saying this and it looks legit. And, now we'll be able to impersonate all these people and no one will know it's real anymore. All right. In a few years' time, we will hit a wall with it. Again, we'll hit a wall. It will start getting more and more realistic up until the point just before it looks real. We'll hit a wall there. And then people will keep telling us, oh no, we'll cross the wall next year and next year and next year. And we never will. It will never be that good. Again, I might look like a clown on this in a few years' time, and it might be a legit political topic, but I very much doubt it, based on how all this stuff has gone.
Look, if things do actually change, I'd be willing to take a mea culpa on that. I mean, I am a person who did think that self-driving cars could actually be a pretty cool thing.
Same.
But of course, that's because, I was young enough to not actually understand the reality that these won't actually work because politics. Like,
yep.
How hard is it to get a road fixed now? And how is an AI going to actually respond to a road that isn't to spec, basically?
Yep. Yeah, I was the same exact way, man. I remember when it was first starting to take off, and you'd see all these videos online about oh shit, we're gonna put so many people out of work, and we're gonna need to completely rebalance the economy, and we're gonna need to do this UBI, which tangentially might be an interesting idea for different reasons. But they said oh, we're gonna need to do all this stuff because we're gonna put so many people out of work, and we're gonna make humans unemployable, and it's gonna do blah 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 blah. And 10 years later, it hasn't happened, and it's looked no closer to happening. Right? I own I own a Tesla, right? I have one of those vehicles. Would I ever trust it to be self-driving? Fuck no. And they're not even close. They keep telling us, oh, we're gonna have it next year. They're not, like, they've been telling us that for like a decade. It's just not gonna happen.
Yeah,
And I
and
think, like,
even like its current stuff, that's really just a scam. I mean,
yeah.
it makes a ton of mistakes, and the only thing it really seems to be intelligent as is turning itself off at the last second to avoid liability.
Oh, I heard about that. Oh, that's bad. Look, I mean, there's other reasons to get a Tesla, which is, the environment, electric cars, blah 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 blah. I still recommend it for those reasons. I would never recommend getting the self-driving shit. If that's why you're getting it, don't. It's that part is gonna waste your money. But um like, full self-driving, that part is a scam. But you know what isn't a scam? Is the driver assistance. That stuff is really good. I put my car on autopilot. Okay, I can't change lanes with it or whatever. I still need to pay attention to the road, but it makes it a lot more convenient. So that's exactly how this AI tech is gonna go, right? It's not gonna go to the extremes that people say it will, where it puts everyone out of work. What it will do is it makes the people who are good at their jobs already even better at their jobs. That's where AI is going to come in handy, right? So if we take it back to this Square Enix tech demo, like, are we going to have a whole game of, a murder mystery game where you can talk to it and they can talk to you and blah blah blah, and that's going to be your whole video game? Probably not. But there might be a bunch of different ways where AI could improve the experience a lot. For example, it could be a situation where, we are able to play an RPG where we can talk to the NPCs, and there might only be like a set number of responses that the NPCs understand, to move the story forward and whatever. But we might get that. Like, there are ways where this AI technology might come in handy. But this is an example of the AI technology just not being that good. It's not as good as the hype we've heard around it. And, shit's expensive. That's the other thing. Like, it's expensive on your computer's resources. It's expensive for people to develop. Like, it's just like, I imagine a game made out of AI. Made out of AI. I imagine a game that's based so heavily on AI and hogging your computer's resources is going to cost you a shit ton of money.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, while you do explain pretty well why it really can't happen, I think someone's going to try, and it's probably going to be about as embarrassing as this. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Someone's going to try, and someone's going to be out of work in a few years. And, that's sad, but, like, great thing about our industry is there's a whole lot of opportunities available. Like, someone recently joined my company who was actually from a self-driving car startup that got shut down.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's probably a bad situation to have been in the last few years, the self-driving
I
car
bet.
startups.
I bet. Yeah, it's rough.
I mean, on the plus side, it might lead to a collapse of part of the gig economy, since a ton of like the gig economy driver companies were trying to pivot into AI driving.
That was the whole thing, was like, oh, Uber's not profitable now, but it will be as soon as we take away the drivers. And of course, they tried it. I think they tried it in Phoenix. I actually saw one on the road in Phoenix, Arizona.
Oh
And
God.
they had to shut it down because I think there was like a huge like fatal accident that caused it, and then all of a sudden the whole thing got shut down. Like, nope, you're gonna find another way to. You're gonna have to find another way to make it your business profitable,
Yeah.
right? And please, for the love of God, pay your goddamn drivers, right? Because that shit is not easy.
Okay. So let's see. So there was a Final Fantasy 14 patch thing on this list, but I'm pretty sure that's the same stuff we covered last month, because I believe it happened on the last day of the month.
Yep, March
Yeah.
31st. That was when it was revealed.
Yeah,
Dark Throne.
we've definitely covered. Yeah, I mean, there's not much to cover aside from what I said last month, which is we're gonna beat up Golbez. That's still happening. We're gonna beat up Golbez.
So should get some good news.
The FanFest is coming up in the next few months, which will be the reveal of 7.0. This is the point where they'll start actually pivoting the plot towards whatever we're doing for 7.0.
So a new saga. So then that one's the new saga, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the new saga started in 6.1.
Oh, it did?
Yeah,
like
the post Endwalker, unlike previous expansions, hasn't actually been part of Endwalker. Like, yeah, it still takes place in Endwalker zones, because, of course it fucking does. They have no new areas to add for several years.
Gotcha. Okay.
So a lot of the story has been taking place around Favner and Garlemald. Yeah, this is but yeah, 6.1 was supposed to be considered like the start of the new story, which so far has been about exploring the void, trying to find the last member of the First Brood unaccounted for, she got sucked into the void during the Allegan Empire's reign, and one of the member of the brood that's been running Favner for all this time. He misses her, wants to find her, and so far, pretty much all we've managed to figure out is that Golbez has her captive and has been using her ether to make his subordinates more powerful, and his big plan is to invade the source and deliberately lose, because the Void Sent can't die. But the reason they can't die is because their home planet doesn't have a life stream. Like, it got destroyed when it got turned into the void. So if they get killed in another planet, like the source, they'll actually die for real. So they're invading and throwing the fight because they really want to die.
What I'm hearing from this is that it's like when Golbez captured Rosa in Final Fantasy IV, except it actually has a plot reason this time.
Yeah.
They're not just doing it for the sake of, the Final Fantasy IV butchered Rosa, man. I mean, that's like one of the worst female characters they've ever done.
God, this is. Yeah, they cannot remaster how cardboard her personality is, unfortunately.
Yep. The Pixel remasters ain't fixing that.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, so far what's been confirmed there, it's not much, because like the full reveal, because these patch reveals are divided into two parts. Like, the first one is the general overview, and the more in-depth one is going to be on May 12th. But yeah, so far we know that we're going to fight Golbez, which is actually interesting that they've just outright said this, because for the past couple patches they deliberately hid who the thing was, probably because they were trying to mask the fact that we killed all of the 4 elemental archfiends in the space of 2 patches. Because 6.2's big fight was Barbarisha, and 3's was Rubicante, and Scarmion and Cagnazzo were the dungeon bosses of those respective patches.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't do that in one of those big raids. like the Final Fantasy 3 raid that I remember.
Oh well, they
And we
wouldn't
had
be
a
doing it at raids because the raids are supposed to be tangential to the story. They might come back later, which is why it's now required by the main story to do the Final Fantasy 3 raids. Because Shadowbringers makes absolute no sense unless you know about what the Crystal Tower is actually designed to do and who Grahatia is.
Right.
Yeah, but because the raids are supposed to be generally designed as side stories that have some relevance to the story, but not critical. So, like the two raids of Endwalker, one of them is Pandemonium, which which so far has been us investigating, like basically this prison/research facility in Elpis in the past. I say so far because that's because like the end of that storyline is going to be happening happening in 6.4, and at the end of the previous part, it looks like everything's been fixed. Return to the present, and then we discover that Pandemonium has appeared in the modern day live stream. So that's where we're at for that one. The other one, directly continues off a plot point that was dropped in the last minute of 6.0's thing. Like, I mean, I described this before. There's a part towards the very end where, like, Emmett Selk is basically rejecting any possibility of returning to life, and the Warrior Light's a bit sad at that because this Emmett Selk is sane now, so he's actually cool to hang out with. And Emmett Selk, in his usual kind of tsundere way, just exasperatedly rattles off a bunch of possible plot points. Um, and the other raid story is continuing off one of those. And it says, you don't even know the true identities of the 12. And that's what we're actually investigating. Like, we found that the 12, which we thought were, a complete misinterpretation of the ancients, is actually real, and they've been challenging us to fights for the hell of it. Yeah, okay, sure. Um. Anyway, I should move on because I really don't have much time. So the other big thing, Final Fantasy 16.
Oh yeah, I mean, the other piece of news that came out was like the PlayStation 5 just had its like best quarter of any console like ever, and it's now sold 25 million copies. But that's not.
It recovering wasn't very surprising because there was like a long bottleneck for PlayStation 5 development pipeline. Best ever is surprising because the PS2 was still like the biggest seller ever, and it's surprising that anything could outsell that.
It would shock me if the PlayStation 5 at the end of its life does outsell the PS2.
Yeah.
Even with these numbers coming in. But I will say, like, if any console of today would outsell the PS2, it would be the PS5. Like, if any console could. And that's just because, like, like the Switch had a great run, but it's like, it's, it had its time, and its time was very short lived. It's like the Switch is just near the end of its life cycle now.
The next Nintendo console is imminent. Like, we do really know that at this point, because you don't mind if I pivot into other general industry news for a second, because honestly, this is still incredibly funny. The CMA has ruled against the merger of Microsoft and Activision because of the cloud gaming industry, which means that the Stadia failed so pathetically that it's caused collateral damage to Microsoft.
Wait, so stupid question. The CMA, is that What does that stand for?
I don't know, but it's British equivalent of the FTC.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, gotcha. So we're talking about the British government. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I did read about that story. That's right. Yeah, they ruled against it because of the cloud gaming thing. They didn't want Microsoft to have an unfair advantage in cloud gaming because they have no real competitor there. Like who are they competing against? Sony? Like, I mean, I use the PlayStation cloud streaming stuff. I actually kind of like it. Like, I think it's pretty
I can't
convenient.
use the PlayStation cloud streaming because I live in the Southern Hemisphere.
Oh yeah, because it's not even available for you yet. Yeah, well, I use it. I like it, but is it replacing like physical copies of games anytime soon? Fuck no. It's not. It's not even like like you said,
It's not even replacing digital copies of games. Like,
it's not available in half the world,
yeah.
so it's not there yet. But yeah, like the idea that anyone could challenge Microsoft at this point in that regard is kind of laughable, to be honest. So I mean, I thought the ruling was fair for other reasons, but if that's the reason they're going with, then great.
Yeah.
So
but
Microsoft
anyway, there is a reason I bring this up in response to you mentioning the Switch being near end of life, and that's because a few months ago, when the CMA was investigating the possibility that Microsoft would just be shits and stop putting Call of Duty on PlayStation. They had during one of their findings, there was one very interesting line for people who really care way too much about Nintendo, and that's they're talking about competing products to Xbox Live, and one of the lines was the Nintendo Switch Online for Nintendo Switch and redacted. Now, as
redacted.
yeah, so like Nintendo Switch Online has some capabilities that you can access via mobile phone, but if they did mean mobile phone there, that wouldn't be something redactable. So yeah, it seems pretty inevitable at this point that Nintendo is. Well, of course it seems inevitable. Why wouldn't they be working on the next generation of hardware?
Yeah,
Like,
the Switch, like, it had its peak where it really did like phenomenally well, and then it very quickly burned down.
the Switch is still doing really well though. Like, it's not like it's collapsed. But at the same time, the Switch is a last gen device. It is not the same generation as PS5 and Series X.
Yeah, I should clarify. It did do phenomenally well. It is still doing well, but in the eyes of the consumer, like, basically the problem it had was it launched underpowered to begin with, right? So it just, of course, couldn't keep up with third-party games as they were going. So it went from, oh shit, I should buy every single third-party game on the Switch because it's more valuable because I can take the Switch anywhere. You'd get more value for it, to where it is now, where it's like, oh, the Switch is the version I least want to get. Like, basically, if I'm gonna buy a game on a Switch, it's gonna be an exclusive. Like, for example, like the Pixel remasters, I ain't buying those on Switch. Like, I'm gonna get them on PS5, well, PS4.
I got them on Switch because do you know how lightweight those games are? Like, they run, it runs just the same as it does on PC because those are mobile games. They were made for iOS and Android.
Oh yeah, I mean, and that doesn't surprise me at all. But I'm not getting them there because I don't play anything on Switch anymore. Like, unless it's an exclusive, right? And that's how, like, that's like, ever since the Steam Deck launched, the Switch has been looking very, very outdated, right? And I don't even have a Steam Deck. So basically, it's gonna be interesting to see what Nintendo come out with. I love how innovative they are, and I'm sure that their next console is gonna be a killer. I'm sure the new Legend of Zelda is gonna be a killer, which is competing against a game we're about to talk about in a few minutes.
I
So
think it's less that like the next thing is going to be like a huge innovation and more of a Switch 2, because I mean, you kind of have to continue the development line of the Switch unless you go back into separate console and handheld hardware paths, and that's not
yeah,
really viable because the handheld scene has been completely dominated by Android and iOS.
yep,
Like, it was already
yeah,
heading that
exactly.
way during the 3DS.
Like they were talking the other day about, oh, we're gonna bring out a Sony handheld again, right? And I
Yeah.
was like, okay, I have nostalgia for those days, but I don't imagine it doing all that well. And then they said, oh no, see, this Sony handheld, you can only use it for remote play. I'm like, well, what's the point? Like, I can do that on my phone. What? That is the most redundant thing I've ever heard of. Like, so yeah, I mean, they probably would have to, but in my experience, like, whenever Nintendo have done we're gonna do a sequel to that previous console thing,
Mhm.
the sequel is always the one that bombs. So, Wii U is the most obvious example. The Wii U just bombed. It was a marketing failure. It was, it did, like, consumers didn't even know what it was.
Yeah.
And, at that point, they'd already moved on from the Nintendo Wii. There was no real point in it anymore,
Yeah.
right? That one bombed. The GameCube compared to the 64, the GameCube bombed in comparison,
The GameCube's
right?
not really a sequel to the 64. Like, the GameCube
Oh, wouldn't you say
was
so?
yeah. I mean, like like a lot of the early Nintendo products, they were before back compat was a thing. So like, there wasn't like kind of no ongoing thing of sequels. They were just completely new products, like the NES
Hmm.
and the SNES, the 64, the GameCube. They were all intended to be like completely standalone products, and then like Nintendo actually really got into back comparison. Like, the Wii was GameCube compatible, the Wii U was Wii compatible, and could be hacked into being GameCube compatible. Um,
Mm.
this of course doesn't apply for the handhelds because there was always a degree of lineage all the way from the Game Boy up to the 3DS. They all had at least one generation of backwards compatibility.
Yeah, I guess when you mentioned the SNES, I was like, okay, that one was a sequel to the NES, and that actually did do really well. So I guess that defeats my argument. But yeah, so we'll see what Nintendo does next and how that affects Final Fantasy going forward. Um, I would like them to continue down the Switch line, but make it much better this time.
Hmm.
But we'll see.
So anyway, back to what we were supposed to be talking about. Final Fantasy 16,
Yeah.
State of Play.
Oh yeah. Huge update.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, there wasn't that much new in this thing. Um, like, yeah. I mean, there was a bit that made my Xenoblade adult head go wild when they like had the archives that has the big relationship chart and the geopolitical map of the progression of the big war that's going on.
Mm.
um, but
That part was pretty sweet.
yeah, a lot of the gameplay stuff they showed off was stuff that we already knew. Uh, and they did show off the theme song, which is uh done by
It's in Japanese.
yeah,
Their theme
yeah,
song is in Japanese. First
but
time since Final Fantasy X.
yeah, it was done. Well, 13 did have a Japanese theme. They just replaced it with My Hands in English for some reason. Um,
Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That's right. Because
um,
I only ever think of 13's theme songs as My Hand.
and the theme song is by Kenshi Yonezu, who I recognize as a big name in Japan, but I couldn't tell you what they actually do.
Yeah, no. I'm
Yeah.
gonna look it up. Kenshi Yonezu. He has a song called Lemon, and I know that because Google's type ahead tells me he has a song called Lemon.
They'll also
He
be
performs under the stage name Hachi, if that helps anyone. And he's a
Okay.
J-pop. He's J-pop, and he is big over there. That's all I can tell you.
Right, yeah. Also, they'll be having a pre-launch event on June 11th. Like something going on in LA. I don't think we have
Yeah.
much more detail than that either.
And unfortunately, viewers, none of the FFWiki have been invited, as far as we know.
um,
So we don't have any news there.
I mean, I highly doubt that anyone actually knows about the wiki's official email because we only use it for YouTube stuff.
Pretty much. Oh shit! I should check if we have anything there. We
I
probably
am
don't.
I am not giving out the wiki's official email on the podcast. Sorry, people.
No.
Okay. Uh, yeah, I want to talk about Final Fantasy 16 stuff some more, but I'm not sure what actually there is to talk about because yeah, a lot of the state of play stuff is stuff that was already covered to some degree. Good. I did find it rather hilarious that one of Clive's Bahamut moves is just a shot lock.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, with 16, I feel like I don't know if there's anything more they can release that will like change people's minds on it.
Hmm.
Because, people are already, for the most part, either very, very excited for it, or there are people who just like are disappointed because it wasn't what they had in mind for their. It's just like, that's the thing. Like Final Fantasy, there's so many different things. And as a result, has such a broad fan base who all want something completely different. So to this point, to anyone who's still disappointed by 16 and still not happy with it, like all I'll say to you is like, just the next one's going to be different. That's the thing. Like Final Fantasy 17 is going to be very different from Final Fantasy 16.
Right.
Right. And even now, we have 7 remake, we have 14, we have so much other stuff going on that if you're still thinking like that just because this one doesn't personally appeal to you, like just because it doesn't mean the next one won't. Like that's the thing. Just be happy that people who are excited for this are getting a game that they're very excited about. And, if you're not cool with it, that's fine. Just don't buy it. Or buy it, but don't I guess just don't shit on people for liking it. I guess. Because, I mean, even back when I wasn't as excited for the game as I am now, I was never like, oh, this shouldn't exist. Like, Final Fantasy is dead. And all this hyperbolic shit that people keep saying. So all I can really say is I don't think anyone's minds are gonna be changed at this point. And what they've released is it's enough for me to say this is gonna be a very, very good game. Is it gonna be game of the year? Who knows? It's up against Zelda, so that'll be pretty difficult, right? And for all we know, Rockstar could announce GTA 6 is coming this year, and in which case no one else is winning game of the year. Yeah, in which case there's no one else is winning game of the year. So I mean, yeah, it looks good.
Yeah, I can already see that game of the year stuff this year is pretty much going to be down to Zelda vs 16.
Yeah, yeah. As far as we can tell, like there's nothing else really competing with it on that
And
level.
part of this is also that game of the year stuff is pretty much always preordained. Like I know you mentioned being shocked by Elden Ring, but that was the game that won the most anticipated reward in every prior Game Awards.
That's that. Yeah, that's fair. Like I was surprised just because I thought like, the way I've seen the Game Awards go is normally it's like, oh, Last of Us 2 wins in every single category it's in. Oh, would you look at that? Last of Us 2 Game of the Year. Who could have seen that coming? Like, and I just saw God of War winning in every single category, and I was like, yep, it's gonna win. And then Elden Ring won. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, they had me fooled at least.
Yeah,
But
and like
good for them.
I never agree with the decisions anyway. I can't remember what my favorite was in the year that Last of Us 2 came out, but it sure as hell wasn't The Last of Us 2.
Yeah,
Last
I didn't care for that game.
last
Like,
year my favorite was Xenoblade 3. Like
oh yeah, yeah. I did not care for The Last of Us 2 as someone who adored Last of Us 1. And like, I just felt like I just felt like with that story, they stopped they got rid of like the human element of The Last of Us 1
hmm.
and just tried to sell you a bunch of misery porn. Like it just like I have nothing against the new characters in it. I just wish they were in a better story. It wasn't for me. But there was a lot of people who really really loved that game.
Hmm.
And fair play to them. If you really enjoy it, that's fine. It's just I could never like I couldn't deal with that level of just constant misery being thrown in my face every single second.
Yeah.
Like, but it's very well made. It's very well made. So from that perspective, I can understand giving it Game of the Year. But I just think it's like, it's like if an Oscar bait film won the Oscars that year, you'd be like, oh great, they did everything to make it an Oscar film, and then it won an Oscar. Wow, look at them. Like that was kind of how The Last of Us 2 felt to me. But I would say the only other competitor I can see for Game of the Year aside from those two, Spider-Man 2, maybe, but I still don't really see that either. And
I
I'm
wasn't
saying
even aware that was coming out this year.
Oh yeah, it is. It is. That's right. Spider-Man, like Spider-Man 1 is probably my favorite PS4 game. Oh, I guess 7 Remake. Okay. Other than 7 Remake, Spider-Man 1 is still probably my favorite PS4 game. And it's Insomniac Games, and I love everything they ever put out, but even still, like, there aren't many people who would argue with you that Spider-Man 1 was incredible. And
oh yeah.
the way they've been talking about Spider-Man 2, it's meant to like be even better than that. So I could possibly see it, but it's just too hard to say at this point because there's so little we know about that game other than that it's meant to be coming out late this year. So it's it's gonna be 16 or it's gonna be Zelda.
Yeah. Like, I can't even think of any other huge releases coming this year.
Yeah, like I was having to think about it for a minute, and then that's when I thought, oh, Spider-Man. But like, I mean, 7 Rebirth, but that's probably not going to be this year.
That release window, the release window they give, like, I'm not going to be surprised when they put out more and it turns out it's coming out February.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I would not be shocked. In fact, I mean, I'd be thrilled because it would give me more time to work on stuff, but I would not be shocked.
I mean, I would also like for it to come out as late as possible in that window for something we'll get to later because we're done with the news and we don't have a huge topic. There's only 2 of us here.
Yep.
So, but yes, Techno, you wanted to talk about wiki stuff.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So that being a few of us as editors have spent a good solid how many months has it been? 4, 5?
I mean, it started during this year, so it's
Okay.
I mean, if it's the thing I'm thinking you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's been a few months since someone yelled at us that the timeline page was not exactly correct. We looked into it.
And the issue was basically, character in Crisis Core does not look the correct age. Yeah, none of them do. Literally none of them do. Nomura is not very good at depicting accurate ages. You would not guess that Riku is only a year older than Sora at the start of Kingdom Hearts.
So how it started was someone on Twitter was angrily tweeting at us because our Final Fantasy VII timeline page listed a date that was actually correct, and it was the date of when either Hojo or Hollander, no, both of them. It was there's an approximate date of when Hojo and Hollander...
there's something that's in the Crisis Core Ultimania, but wasn't in but was only really in the Crisis Core thing, and while we had it correct, our thing didn't say that because whoever built when that timeline page was built off the live stream's translation of all of the Ultimanias at that point, they had only credited one of the Final Fantasy VII 10th anniversary, and not they also sourced 7 Omega and Crisis Core for that timeline.
Yeah. So, if we're to tell the story in chronological order, the Final Fantasy VII timeline page existed way, way back in the day. If I check the history of it, it was probably I'm gonna guess it's 2009 when it must have first been created, and it looks like I'm not too far off. Yes, I'm exactly correct. It was created in 2009. This Final Fantasy VII timeline page,
right?
And it was based off of the livestream.net, which is this old fan site that still exists, but was much bigger back then than it is now. And what they did is like you said, they created a timeline based off of a bunch of different sources that they found, but the only one they really credited was the 10th anniversary edition Ultimania.
Well, they mentioned that they also included stuff from other things. It's more that it got lost when we were adapting it to wiki format.
Yeah, exactly, right. Because they basically said, we got this timeline from the 10th anniversary Ultimania plus a bunch of other ones, right?
Yeah.
But they didn't list exactly which one was which. So they just listed the timeline and they don't have citations next to them. So of course, when at the time 2009, we don't have many Japanese speaking users. Do we have any at that point?
Sometimes we'd have a wandering Japanese speaker that shows up and clarifies a few things.
Yeah, exactly. We wouldn't have consistent, I guess we should say, consistent and really qualified Japanese-speaking people. So, of course, all we could resort to was the livestream.net and their translation of the timeline, right?
Yeah.
So, we created our timeline page based off of that, and then over the years, we added things to it from books that came out after that, such as 7 Remake Ultimania, and then 7 Remake Material Ultimania, which added a whole new timeline for Midgar. We added stuff to it, but it became a complete mess because, we said at the top of the page, assume all of this comes from the 10th anniversary Ultimania, which it didn't. A lot of it didn't come from that. So the specific issue that the person on Twitter yelling us about, where that came from, was them saying, this date isn't correct because... I checked the 10th anniversary Ultimania and it doesn't say what you said it did. And of course, they were actually they were actually correct that the 10th anniversary Ultimania didn't say that. What did say that date was the Crisis Core Ultimania, right?
It was the Soldier Birthday stuff, I think, which was already like deliberately vague, and and on our thing we did the math, and it comes out as approximately 1980. So that's what we put down, approximately 1980. Because a lot of the live streams one is dictated in terms of X time before or after game. So but we know when those games happen on the timeline, so we just manually do the math on it ourselves and put down whatever year we come up with an approximately, if necessary, which it usually is if it was defined in those terms.
Yeah, so what happened was we found this out, we dug into it, and we realized they're half right. They're not completely right, and they're not right enough to which they're yelling at us was justified. But they're half right.
They're on Twitter.
Well, yeah, of course. So we figured, all right, let's fix this date. And as we were looking at it, we realized this whole page is a piece of shit. Like, this whole page really is not up to our current standards. It doesn't list citations properly.
Yeah.
It doesn't source things correctly. This isn't really a very trustworthy page that we want to show to people. So what we decided was we're going to redo the whole thing completely from scratch. And now that we actually do have an actual Japanese speaking person who's a regular, they will be able to, and they have access to all these books that have these timelines in them.
Yeah, like she already has most of the Ultimanias and the ones that, and I think one that was missing from a list we were able to find on Internet Archive anyway. So.
Yep. Yeah. And so she sourced all of that and then went up and wrote up this whole timeline for us. And around the same time, Final Fantasy VII Remake Trace of Two Pasts released in English, and that has a couple of dates in it. Luckily, they added a few dates in it, even though the dates are sometimes like on Tifa's 17th birthday, Zangan visited her. And it's like, okay, I mean, we can trace from that it's going to be May 3rd of 1984 plus 17. So, so that's how we would trace those dates. But so they released that around this time, and they'd already released 7 remake material Ultimania in English. That already had its own timeline to it. So we compiled all of this together, and it took us several months of translating all the old stuff. So we would have we have an Excel sheet that has an exact translation, an exact transcription next to it of the different events in the timeline, listed them up, and based off of that, you have the new Final Fantasy VII timeline page, which incidentally is also rewritten completely differently, because the old Final Fantasy VII timeline page was a lot of words. A lot of words that it elaborates on stuff that the game tells you, and it doesn't need to elaborate on them for, which is I don't agree with the decision that the old writers of those pages made. But so now we have a totally new timeline page. It's accurate. It's in my humble opinion well written. It's sourced properly, so you have a citation next to everything that will tell you not only the book where you can find exactly what the date was, but also it will link you to the event in the game. So for example, it will link you to the chapter in Final Fantasy VII where that occurs. So if we go to let's say December of 007, right? That's the year when when Final Fantasy VII the events start. So for December 9, I have events of number 1 reactor bombing and at the hideout in the slums. Barrett's avalanche cell, sending himself, Biggs, Wedge, Jesse, and employing Cloud as a mercenary, blow up Marco Reactor 1. The group return to a hideout via train, Cloud meeting Aerith on the way, and at the hideout in 7th Heaven, Tifa secures Cloud's future cooperation. It's just under a paragraph in terms of length. It summarizes the events of the first 2 chapters in Final Fantasy VII. Those 2 chapters, according to the Ultimania, by the way. And, it has all these citations next to it, so you know exactly where we're getting the date from, where we're getting the information in the chapters from. And, basically, you have something you can trust now, which I couldn't really say about the old timeline page at all. So there you go. Took us months, but we have it.
That's a material Ultimania Midgar timeline is pretty good, by the way. I mean, it's not.
Oh yeah.
It's not like very detailed on things that happen outside of Midgar, but it was complete with diagrams of like the actual construction of the city and how progressive it was. That Ultimania is a very nice book.
Oh, it is.
And it's actually, and unlike most Ultimanias, it's actually in English.
Yep. I also feel like the Ultimania does a little bit of a retcon, actually, from the original game. Like, in the original game, there's a line that Barrett says, I think it's Barrett, who said, like, oh, all the different sectors of Midgar used to have their own names. Like, they used to be actual towns, and they used to be named. But then Shinra moved in, and then they were just Sector 1, Sector 2, Sector 3, right? And the Material Ultimania kind of retcons that. It's saying, like, these sectors, the concept of them, of towns there, just didn't exist at all. Like, the only reason the slums exist is because there was a bunch of debris left behind from when they were building on top of the Midgar plate. And then people just said, okay, well, I want to live in Midgar, but I can't live on the top of the plate, so I'm just going to live right around the debris on all the lodgings that were left behind from the construction workers that were building it. So it's a bit of a retcon from the original.
Okay.
I don't think it's a bad retcon. It's just, it's an interesting direction they decided to go in.
Right. So yeah, that is the big wiki thing. The other wiki thing is that we're starting on creating the Final Fantasy 16 skin, dark theme, obviously. I haven't done much with it. Like, I've mainly just created a linear gradient to replace the background color, because I mean, like, one thing they showed off during the state of play was like the title screen, which, like, that was really nice. It has like this blue to red wash over the entire thing, which I have sort of emulated on desktop, which, I mean, I think it looks alright, although I'd have to actually change the header image, which I kind of have to do last, because that's a change that, I can't, like, fuck around within my own CSS. It's something that I have to use the theme designer on, and once I do that, it goes live to everyone. And, like, I'm working on it slowly. I did mean to do stuff, but I had an excuse, and as the Xenoblade 3 expansion came out this week.
As good an excuse as any.
But I have actually beaten that now, so I'll get back to fucking actually working on stuff.
Hey. Yeah, so with the Final Fantasy VII timeline page now done, and with basically every script for Final Fantasy VII done, every English script, with the exception of Dirty Cerberus, which I don't want to do. With the exception of those, we should be able to, like, completely write all of the lore content for Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
So we should be able to do that, which we couldn't before.
Hmm.
Because, I don't know how to write lore without a script page. And for Final Fantasy VII, it's a whole different beast because there's actually dates and times to this shit. So we should be able to have that ready for you all at some point this year. Hopefully, can't give you a proper date for it yet, but it's coming. I've also been busy in that I actually am going to be a homeowner in a week's time. So, homes are expensive and are a constant cycle of maintenance and repairs.
Yep.
So I've been busy with that. But yeah, exciting times coming. And I can't tell you who will be writing for Final Fantasy 16 and how that will go, but I can tell you there'll be a good skin behind it.
Yeah. I mean, if you do want to turn it on, like, my there's always my CSS file, which like, if you know how wikis work, you know where to find that. But I do also link to it in the Discord channel where we discuss CSS stuff, and like, you can take that to turn on whatever. Just be aware that once I actually start really going at it, the light theme is going to look like shit because I do not use the light and dark theme filters in my personal CSS because, like, it's just a testing ground for stuff. And once I'm done with it, I'm just going to turn it off entirely after I import stuff into the main skin. So yeah, if people are interested in beta testing that, you can just grab my CSS and tell me what you think. Not much to talk about yet because all you'll see is that gradient.
Yep.
Yeah.
And plus, like, a lot of it is tied to the theme designer these days and not necessarily to CSS.
Well, the theme designer does translate into CSS.
Well, yeah, it does, but like,
and like, if it's something that I'm not really supposed to do, like, say, the gradient, I can just put it in the CSS anyway and override.
Yep.
Right. Was there any?
I would say that there are wikis out there with some god awful designs that are really shit because they're doing stuff in CSS that they're not supposed to be doing. But luckily, in our case, we have several people who are actual, like, professionals in the tech industry, and we work with this kind of shit all the time. We actually know what the fuck we're doing.
Yeah.
Like, we're not a 13-year-old who's figured out CSS for the first time and graphics design is their passion.
And also, just in a general sense, we don't fuck with the content. Like that is that is the big issue. If you look at it right now, even if you don't like this fade from black to blue to red that I've got in the background, that is the back of the background. If you know how fandom skins work, the background of the site and the background of the article are completely different things. And for what should be hopefully, very fucking obvious reasons, we do the background of our article is completely solid, no opacity at all, so it doesn't. So what's going on back there does not bleed into the article.
Right.
Yeah.
Plus, a lot of the more egregious things on fandom wiki skins, a lot of them are banned now. So, for example, you're not allowed to change the cursor anymore, which I can't believe we were ever allowed to do that. That was so stupid.
Ah, damn.
But there were some wikis, like, I think, like, Disney Wiki was the most infamous example.
God, I remember going to that site.
Like, they changed the fucking cursor so it looks like the Mickey Mouse figure. And it's so disorienting. Like, it makes me not want to use the site because it looks so weird. But they banned that. You're not allowed to do that anymore, which, thank God. I'm gonna check that skin actually. I'm gonna see if they improved it.
Hmm.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's not, it's not nearly as bad as it used to be.
Right.
Not to chat shit about that wiki. I'm sure the content is fine. I'm sure the community know what they're doing. But,
Yeah.
your old skin was not very sightly.
Okay. Is there anything else that we needed to cover?
I don't think so for this month. I think you can see us next month.
Right. Okay. So that's it. I'm SomeColorMage. There's Technobliterator. Hold on. I need to bring up the podcast stuff because I forget the exact name of the song that I'm going to have to edit into this. It is La Montana de los Caballos Jovenes by XPRTNovice from OC Remix in the Balance of Ruin soundtrack. Right, and I guess as an outro thing, while Blue couldn't be here this time, he did ask us to mention one thing that happened in the last couple of days, and that is some layoffs at Vice Media, which has them shutting down all of Waypoint. And yeah, that is some real sick shit, honestly. Waypoint sometimes could be weird, but overall it was actually a very good media outlet. And like, and games media sucks, man. Like, if anyone tries to do something good, they just end up getting ousted because money.
So the one guy who tweeted at us a few weeks ago when fandom laid off a bunch of people in their own media division, it's not just fandom, mate.
Mm.
Like it's not just fandom, and you're gonna need a much more compelling reason for us to fork than just that.
But also the layoffs at Giant Bomb were objectively awful.
Well, yeah, those were fucking horrible. They were, but just media in the gaming space is not great. It's not in a good space.
Right, and anyway, but yeah, that sucks. I don't know what else there is to say, except maybe signing off the same way that Waypoint does. Fuck capitalism, go home. Yeah. See ya. See you next time.